very, very distinguished as well in their own right, um, are going to bring up some topics and discussions about their work and provide some solutions and opportunities that can show that this is very practical approach. It's a very practical business model, and it's beyond business. You know, it's also into the community and the social impact space. And so with that being said, is I first want to call to the podium Obi Aguesbe. I apologize. So I'll let you.
Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be here. So, my name is Obi Aguesbe. I'm one of the co-founders of Black Women Professional Worker Co-op. Okay, so discussing the intersection and integration of diversity, equity, and inclusion in cooperative education. So I'll start with diversity is about the unique differences that define each of us. Equity is about providing equal access while understanding that systemic barriers have to be acknowledged and addressed. Inclusion fosters a sense of value and ownership where members feel like they belong and are not just there for appearance's sake. We must educate ourselves and our members that there is strength in diversity. Not just diversity, we will need to address systemic barriers that will require establishing social and governance structures that work. These structures require inclusiveness, where everyone's needs and cultures in decision-making are given equal consideration. Diversity, equity, and inclusion fall under the social component of the sustainability concept, lacking in most countries and around the world. Now, how do we teach diversity? A co-op's ability to meet the needs of its members requires thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And with diversity comes varied people and cultures. The use of personas of imagined Bobs, Glenders, Johns, though current best practices in the design world is doing a disservice to the development process. With personas, you don't know the people. You end up distancing yourself from the people you're looking to assist and missing opportunities to ask the right questions that will enable the development of a sustainable co-op that meets its members' needs. So in terms of where I got the, the idea of personas, right, I lifted it up from same product design, right? Designing any product, designing any program, right? You have to know who you're speaking with, who the people are, right? And it was, I think it was from John Netter. It was on LinkedIn, one of the courses. So it was very, very great and very impactful. And I applied in most things, designing programs, designing projects, and the co-op. So a sustainable co-op is an extra value add resulting from a lot of thinking, developing, and iterating so that members' differences are embraced such that the unique skill set, attributes, expertise that each member brings to the table are now 10 times more valuable when combined to meet the needs of members and their communities. Now, Black Women Professional Co-op, our journey to developing a sustainable cooperative. Now, what is BWPW Co-op? So that's our acronym. PWPW Co-op is a registered workers cooperative in Ontario, Canada. We are a Black women-owned network of entrepreneurs and professionals building resilient, healthy, and thriving communities focused on women's economic freedom and social cultural agency. We empower Black women in the agro chain and non-agro ecosystem to operationalize scale-up products and services to mainstream local and international markets and provide access to professional and business training, networking, and tools and resources. These are identified needs of our community. BWP Co-op provides a safe space for all members to collaborate and support one another via a rotating savings and credit association, which is a ROSCA, an investment club. We invest in and scale businesses to enable our members to create intergenerational wealth, contribute to their communities, and build meaningful legacies. We have 10 founding members. Our members are diverse. Even though we're all women, Black women to be precise, we come with our different expertise and worldview, which implies that we won't always agree. But we understand that our diversity is our strength. We are made up of financial advisors, bankers, business analysts, gender advocates, etc. Now, what do I bring to BWP Corp? So that's identifying my skill set, right, and my experiences, my attributes, right, what I bring to the table. So I have over 20 years of experience in environmental management, climate change, sustainability, program and project management, spanning different sectors in North America, Africa, and United Kingdom. I'm a certified environmental professional under Eco Canada with an environmental management designation. I have a master's degree in clean technology, a BSc in chemistry, postgraduate certificate in environmental management, and a certificate in adult education, training, and development. I am the founder and CEO of EnvironFocus, a sustainability services firm, and founder and ED of Sustainable Community Aid Network, a not-for-profit that addresses the issues of visible minority groups. I mentor numerous students in my field. Now, based on my expertise and experience, what do I bring to BWPW Co-op? So, I help with project and program development and implementation, strategic plan grant writing, and defining and implementing our co-op's environmental social governance, which is the ESG goals and practices. I also help with business management because we are a for-profit organization. So we're establishing social and governance structures where everyone's needs and cultures in decision-making processes at any level are given equal consideration and members have a sense of ownership and belonging. So we recognize that we are a democratic organization and everyone's vote counts, which is the core principles. Considering that we all have different work and family commitments, we schedule all external meetings after 7 p.m. on weekdays and some weekends. We have weekly meetings and quarterly retreats where we can work on our strategic plan and its implementation. We share the cooperative principles and value at our meetings, and at the start of every meeting, we also share and internalize our BWP Co-op values and guiding principles. So what are they? So our values, our courage and commitment, creativity and consistency, excellence and discipline, empathy-based leadership and followership, integrity, transparency, responsibility and accountability, respect and dignity for all. Our guiding principles. We use indigenous knowledge and wisdom. We are people-centric and understand the power of community. Partnerships, our partnerships are towards shared prosperity, solidarity and cooperative economics, sisterhood, sisterhood and a sense of belonging. So these are our guiding principles. So our challenges. Now, the collective work that has been done by Black feminist theorists subsequently captures our story. As Black women, we are discriminated against for being Black and for being women. We always exist in both identities. The story of Black women at work and in life is one of resilience, and despite the challenges and barriers in our way, we have accomplished so much, continue to make remarkable strides. We are highly educated and ambitious women, and we're business owners forging our path. Our drive to succeed is often not just for ourselves, but to also lift our communities. Like other Black women, we face challenges that include a lack of access to capital, capacity building, mentorship. Our demographic lacks access to data, authentic representation, and constant systemic racism. Our stories are not being told by us. So what are our successes? What have we been able to do so far, right? I don't know if I mentioned, we started this organization last year, August. We just registered it last year, August 2021. All right, so now, as Black women of African heritage, we are ingrained in the working of the Rosca model, which we call a SUSU. A SUSU is an informal financial cooperative based on reciprocity and trust, where women pool funds together and rotate the collection of the funds to achieve specific individual goals. Now, we run an enhanced model called the Rosca Plus, where the funds pulled together are also invested in creating more wealth. We started using the Rosca Plus informally and have successfully pulled funds several times and invested in our members with excellent results. If you want to know more about this alternative financing system, you should join our panel discussion later today. Now, being professionals with many years of experience living and working and doing business in Canada, wanting to make sure that we build solid structures necessitated that we became part of the co-op ecosystem. So what did we do? So we have joined the Canada Worker Co-op Federation, that's the CWCF, the Local Food and Farms, and the Ontario Cooperative Association, which is the OCA. Now, we constantly avail ourselves to learn the workings of the Canadian formal sector and work alongside the stakeholders to ensure we can have opportunities available to all co-op in Canada. Now, as a result of being part of an ecosystem, we are linked with two co-op developers. So we have Susan Redcup from Local Food and Farms and Christine Clark from Freedom Dreams. She's right here. Now, since August 2021, we have met with Susanna weekly for an hour to 90 minutes to work on our governance. We are also working with the OCA to build our legal structure. One of our members is on the DEI Committee, which is the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee of CWCF. She's also a member of the first Canadian formal Rosca network facilitated by Dr. Caroline Chinez Hussein, an intersection of the work between academia, the stakeholders, and the government, and the formal co-op sector. She's here, Juliet Kego Ume, or Ito. As an organization, we have received a few grants to help with organizational effectiveness and governance. Some of our members have accessed grants through our services. We've been able to scale up the distribution of a product of one of our members, Bilkisu Umar of El Sutro Foods, to 22 stores across Canada from our Rosca Plus. Now, our goals for the future include having a food hub and an industrial kitchen for our members, scaling up multiple product lines and growing membership to a minimum of 1,000 over the next 5 years. In conclusion, the future of co-op education, based on our experience, is the powerful role that culture plays. The need for flexibility and creativity to expand the social and solidarity economy, and the courage and resilience to forge new paths, to challenge the status quo and better understand the complementary roles of both the formal and informal or alternative cooperative economy. I'd like to read a quote by Tanya Hales that resonates with us, and that is, Black female founders are not looking for handouts. Quite the opposite. They are more likely to bootstrap their business than any other group entrepreneurs. So, at BWP Co-op, our vision, mission, and goals are bold and anchored on sisterhood solidarity, because when you help a woman rise, her community rises with her. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Obi Agusi Egbe. Appreciate it. And with that was beautiful and very strong. And next, I would like to introduce Esther West. And Esther is from the Latinx community. She's also one of my collaborators and cooperators with the Ajani Group. And we focus on BIPOC education. And so Esther, she does a lot in the research segment, and so we're all bound together in this. So in the words of Desmond Tutu, I am because you are, so is Esther.
Thanks so much, Gary. Can you hear me? Great. So yeah, I really appreciate your asking me to be here and to get to speak with you guys. It's just beautiful. I really appreciate it. So thank you. Yeah. So my name is Esther West, and it's great to be here with all of you as well. Let's see here. So just a little quick background before I get started about where I'm coming from. My background is primarily worker co-op space. I'm on the board of the Federation of U.S. Worker Co-ops and do provide TA services through that as well, through the co-op clinic. I was a worker owner at Equal Exchange for several years. I'm part of the Ajani Group Worker Co-op as well. And I also have a background in urban planning and environmental studies. So I got a master's in those, 2 masters, and then I lecture part-time at San Francisco State in their environmental studies department. So just so you have a little context from where I'm coming from. But I was told today that we're sharing our stories. So I wanted to share a little bit more of a narrative format. I don't usually do that, but I thought I'd try something new, So yeah. So on my flight here, I looked out my window and very clearly saw the Big Dipper. It gets me to thinking about constellations. What constellations could we draw in our movement together? And what could we draw now, and what can we see that are either just being made out in the sky now or just over the horizon? What would that look like to you? So personally, I come from a lineage of stellar-related names. My mom, Chole's original name, Soledad, means sun in Spanish, and she taught me the power of our Chicanic communities. My dear late father's name was Ray, as the sun rays shine, and through him I've engaged in worker co-ops at an early age as a tool for racial and economic and social justice. And my own name means star, so that, a little celestial connection. So from them, I prefer the term co-op organizer over co-op developer, as it reflects our shared work. And I love peer-to-peer learning. I've always learned best when I get to see others in practice as members, as worker owners. And we're in this because we're in this together. And indeed, we've been in this work together. Did you know that in the 60s and 70s in the US, the United Farm Workers, the Black Panthers, and Filipino workers were all allies? To me, the co-op work that we do now, especially like in the worker owner space, is strongly situated in this history of solidarity. I don't hear that talked a lot about, so I think to me, that's like where I'm coming from with this work. So I think it's important to, raise that. In our new co-op, the Ajani Group, we believe in this so much that we created an entire co-op for this work, and we've been meeting weekly. We share together, we build together, It's very meaningful. And we know our struggles and also our joys are intertwined deeply. Check out ajani.coop and get in touch if you want. AJANI.coop. So, yeah. I'd like to mention Dr. Jessica Gordon-Nemhard as well. So she is an example of someone who really shines in our movement, particularly in raising to light African-American co-op history through her work with Collective Courage. Currently, she kindly asked me to be a research assistant with her, and we're researching co-ops in prisons. So co-ops in prisons of incarcerated people could be a major positive for BIPOC communities in this profoundly unjust and brutally dehumanizing prison system. Did you know that 1 in 5 prisoners in the entire world is incarcerated in the US? That's 2.3 million people in prison in the US. And nearly 70% are BIPOC. In the US, 1 of every 10 black men in their 30s is incarcerated on any given day, and Latinx men are 2.3 times as likely as white men to be incarcerated. And that stems from deeply unjust systems. Our co-op movement has a true opportunity to act. 2 of Jessica and our major findings so far are, first, that the co-op movement needs to engage in this work from an abolitionist perspective and learn from existing abolitionist work that's already being done. Second, it takes a robust co-op ecosystem to really make co-ops in prisons thrive nationally. So there aren't examples in the US really of co-ops in prisons, but globally there are some really strong examples, like in the Mekele prison in Ethiopia, in Puerto Rico, and then we found that, using Google Translate, we find that there let me see here, there are almost 1,000 co-ops in prisons in Iran. So yeah, so there is a great capacity for this, potential for this, okay? So again, it takes a robust co-op ecosystem to really make co-op in prisons thrive nationally. So think policy development, national funding, advocacy. And this is a real opportunity, but honestly somewhat of a test of the co-op movement to step up and put the DEI talk into an arena that is really affecting our communities. Does our movement have the resolve to actually actively apply the co-op principles and values to some of our most marginalized and oppressed people in society? As Jessica also notes, this requires educators, and co-op developers to believe that everyone deserves economic democracy and dignified work that they can control. So Jessica, I love her. She's wonderful. She also acted in solidarity. We work in solidarity together when we partnered on the Latinx Co-op Power Report. So this is Latinx Co-op Power in the US, because I know, we're all over, right? But so again, we're all stronger when we work together, particularly since additionally there are also Afro-Latinos and many mixed people. So, we have united struggles and joys. And while there's, and what some of the findings, while there's surprisingly, but positively, there's a lot of work being done in the credit union space for meeting Latinx community needs, as well as within the worker co-op space. There's still so much more that can be done. So, did you know Latinx women make 78 cents for every $1 white men make? And there's, if that, I don't know, that sounds like, it's pretty dismal. And as with Black women, there's still a large pay gap, even with experience in education being considered. So it's no wonder that there's so much entrepreneurship in our demographics. The co-op movement could be more responsive to this. again, by putting more resources and energy towards it, and acknowledging existing leadership and bringing people who are leaders into, our work, and putting ourselves into their, sharing, right? So this report was also the first comprehensive report with like data collection, all that, of Latinx co-ops in the U.S. There are other studies and reports, but not like quite so comprehensive. So to me, this reflects that it's really critically important to have BIPOC leadership in the research to encourage this work, right? And to lead our co-ops, and to lead our co-op spaces, and not let this work drop off. That's happened too, and it really stinks, but I'm really proud of what we have done together and are going to do. So the constellations we draw may be a little different, and that's okay. Beautiful even, and the many constellations reflect our vast communities. More and more, as more of us take part and collectively offer our unique visions. So let us thrive and recognize that the co-op model is a tool, a great one, but still a tool that we can wield in ways that replicate damaging capitalist, racist, and unjust systems. Or we can choose to use it in ways that build new just visions over time with conscious unlearning. Sadly, I've seen many examples of microaggressions as well as overt aggressions in our own movement. And we need to very consciously unlearn that and make space for each other. Since 2018, joining the co-op development movement nationally, I've seen 5 African-American co-op developers be fired. That sickens me. So I really want us to step up and be better to each other. And when we hire people, treat each other with respect and see each other. So while there are so many opportunities for our movement to keep growing, I also want to point out the urgency of climate change and climate justice in particular. We as a movement fully need to act now to be part of climate change mitigation and supporting adaptation, particularly for low-resource communities. Energy access, even just being able to have energy, is an area we'll need to continue to work on, which our movement has a clear history with, say, rural electrics. But that being said, energy absolutely needs to be available and responsive to BIPOC communities and members. I highly recommend the book Energy Democracy for many excellent examples. Energy Democracy. Additionally, on the adaptation side, BIPOC neighborhoods that have been historically redlined will and are being hit harder by climate change events like flooding, extreme heat, and responding to climate extremes. Think, for example, an example is in redline neighborhoods in the US. They are typically 5 to 12 degrees hotter than neighborhoods that were not redlined, okay? Because of whether it's concrete or proximity to pollutant, industry, etc. So ideas may be translation in different languages that people speak, of say extreme event warnings or insurance, or it may be building up our co-op ecosystem for recovery housing, and insurance, and even just using our network to communicate during times of crisis. So Ajani just got a CDF grant. Thank you so much, CDF, to produce educational materials on this topic, as well as co-op financial literacy. So keep an eye out. And so we'll have some good ideas in there, I think. So like co-op climate change action plans, a lot of other ideas, supply chain related things. So keep an eye out. Another resource that I really recommend is Intersectional Environmentalist. If you Google that, there's a great website, media around that. So raise your hand if you've seen the new James Webb images of our universe. Yeah, the James Webb, the universe, yeah. So it's amazing, right? It's incredible. It's incredible, too, that we are seeing ancient starlight. And to me, this reminds me that our own ancestors can teach us about who we are. And also give fresh eyes to where we are going. Yeah, and I really believe that. So, and I wonder what constellations will we collectively draw? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Esther. Great explanation on how we're all universally interconnected, just like the constellations. What I like to call we're all intertwingled. You know, the work that we do, everything is intertwined, interconnected, and so with that is we're going to continue this conversation with Miss Christine Clark. And Christine?
Thank you, Gary. Okay, so we good? Awesome. Okay, great. So where do I start? That's a question for me. It's not an existential question for you. Where do we start as a co-op sector? Because when Gary invited me to be part of this plenary 2 hours ago, I said, of course, Gary, because unfortunately one of the panelists wasn't able to make it. And I said, I got your back, Gary, because we have a long history of working together since yesterday when we met. And I am here for you. So I'm going to talk about, but Gary was wonderful enough to give me some questions by which I'm going to use as my guide. I'm also going to use as my guide the two panelists who spoke before me, Obi and Esther, and bring in this idea of, you know, constellations and the connections that we can make in this sector, as well as that discipline and that focus and that sisterhood that
Turned it off. Yeah. No, right. Just push over.
yes, that the sisterhood that Obi spoke about. So I'm going to take a lot from both of their presentations. Also talking about constellations. I'm going to call them my ancestors. When I introduce myself, and my name is Christine Clark, I often say I'm the daughter of Iris. It's in my mother's memory that I do this work. I'm also going to take from both Esther and my mother this concept of, I'm going to tell a story right now. And this story that I'm going to tell you is either going to be very coherent and focused, and I'm going to make a lot of great points, and it's going to be really enlightening, or in the memory of my mother, it's going to be jovial and all over the place and humorous, and, you know, the stars might not connect in the moment, but hopefully later when you're in your rooms, you go, oh, wow. Wow, I really understood all the deeper meanings of what Christine was saying. Okay, great. So let's start. How I got into the co-op sector. I got into the co-op sector based on this very principle that collective ownership and democratic decision-making, particularly among communities that need to pool their resources, it means that those of us, because those communities that need to pool their resources in order to build wealth, in order to survive economies that are based on racial capitalism, that are based on heteronormativity, we're doing this to survive, but then hopefully also to thrive. And so what that means is, and what brought me to the co-op sector, is that those of us who are most negatively impacted by the decisions made at the workplace, and those decisions are based on racial capitalism, those decisions are based on a foundation of heteronormativity and patriarchy, that those of us most negatively impacted by that showing up in the workplace, we can be the worker owners. We could be the ones creating the co-op culture and make work work for us. That's what brought me to the co-op sector. Because I've been in the working world for the last 2 decades. I started as a journalist. I then became an organic farmer. Even 10 years ago, I had the unfortunate, I remember saying this to a coworker, that maybe with the exception of one workplace that I've been in, I've experienced microaggressions and discrimination at every workplace I've worked in. I'm just gonna pause for a second. And I see folks in this space right now who are nodding because you understand, right? And I see folks who are not nodding because you don't understand what that's like, and how that impacts you when you've been contracted to do work, you've been contracted to do a job, but you also have to expend, so you're doing your job, and then you also have to expend this extra labor, this emotional labor, this mental labor, having to navigate that kind of discrimination. So that's why I came to the co-op sector. Now, Esther said something in terms of these types of microaggressions and discrimination. It even shows up in our movements, right? And that's true, because when I came to the co-op sector 1.5 years ago, I quickly started seeing those dynamics replicated in the co-op sector. And so based on that, I started an organization. I co-founded an organization. One of my colleagues, Aileen, is here. And I'll also uplift Susanna Redekop. You've heard her name before from Juliet. Freedom Dreams Cooperative Education. And who we are is we are an educational resource and co-op development services. And we endeavor to create co-op dev resources that support BIPOC-led, so Black, Indigenous, and person of color-led co-ops. Because I'll be honest, I'm tired. I'm tired of having to walk into workplaces and deal with this. And so when I came to the co-op sector, I was expecting to just walk in and be embraced because all of these issues had already been figured out, and they haven't. So one of the questions is what impact do we hope our work has? And it's exactly that. Because it's, can we create resources where we have actual concrete approaches and answers to solving these issues? So when, for example, Obi talks about, this culture of sisterhood and mutual respect, yes, and it's how do you do that? How, as a diverse group of Black women, do you come together to make sure that you are making those financial decisions for the health of your company, but that you're also taking care of each other, right? It's the how. Hopefully the vision with Freedom Dreams is that, and I'm gonna say Freedom Dreams, but I also want to uplift the work that Gary and Esther are doing with Ajani Co-op, because it's along that same, it's those constellations, right? We're all orbiting in the same question of how do we concretely do that? Because for many of us in this room, depending on how long you've been in the workplace, you've heard all of this before, right? You've heard all of the talk about DEI. You've probably been, I know I've certainly been in, interviews or board meetings or meetings with progressive organizations, and they say all of these things. And then the reality is when issues come up, when microaggressions occur, when discrimination occurs, there's actually no concrete way to deal with this. And so that's what we're looking to do, right? It's how do we create those co-op educational resources in order to answer those questions. I think additionally with Freedom Dreams, our work, our vision is to very much do this work in community. And so what do I mean by that? It's actually going beyond DEI as this sort of quantitative effort. Because in any of your given organizations, if you are really honest with yourself and the approaches that you're taking, you're still at a quantitative place. You're looking for more Black people to join your organization, more communities of color to join your organization. You're looking for kind of this visual diversity. But the real work is in, and I'm not even gonna say equity or inclusion, it's an intersectionality, right? If you're a sector that says, oh, we're all voices at the table, you're actually talking about intersectionality. And so when I say Freedom Dreams is looking to do that work in community, it's literally like, how in community can we do this work? Can we exercise co-op power, you know, within our communities, Latinx co-op power, Black co-op power, in an intersectional way, so that we understand how to cooperate, taking into consideration all of our lived experiences. So that's the work that we're hoping to do. That's the impact that we're hoping to make. I'm gonna refer back to my questions to see if I've hit everything. Gary, let me know if there's, keep going. Gary says, keep going. You're doing great. I'm looking at my phone. I have a message from Aileen who says, do you want a donut after this talk? And yes, I do. And because that is an example of cooperation and communities of care. My colleague wants to know, you know, do you need a donut after this as you are on the spot? How do I plan to further the work in future to mobilize communities through solutions? It is through, I recognize when I come to these conferences, now I'm not speaking to everybody in the room, but what I'm looking for is to mobilize with the other cooperators who understand what I say when I say, let's go, if I say, let's go beyond diversity, equity, and inclusion, and let's start talking about intersectionality, you're literally nodding and going, yes, I've been waiting for that conversation, right? You're not looking for 101 definitions. You're like, yes, let's do that work. So I'm looking for that mobilization. I'm looking for those of you in the room who are going, oh yeah, let me talk to Christine after this session. And again, Gary, Esther, and I, we met yesterday, and our conversation was, okay, how do we build this cooperative commons, this educational commons, to get to that intersectionality in co-ops? So where do I see Freedom Dreams? It's in mobilizing, right? Let's stop being in these silos. Let's work together. Let's combine our educational and development resources to create this strong commons, so that if anybody like myself, when I started and looked into the co-op sector, that you're not looking somewhere where you actually don't feel that you could be welcome here, that you could easily and readily see a mobilization of other cooperators who've got you, right? In your very starting points, we've got you. Same way I got Gary like 2 hours ago, that kind of thing. So that's how I see the work fitting in the sector. And what do I see coming, what do I hope to see come out of this conference? I hope to see more of those connections being made. I hope to just have more ideas of how do we create that concreteness I spoke about, ideas of how do we do that. So if you're at this conference, if you're online and you actually have some ideas, like, let me know. What do I mean? Am I speaking vaguely? What do I mean by that? So for example, this idea of democratic decision making with this ideology of all voices at the table, how do you do that when all of those voices at the table may come with different gender identities, may come with different ethnic identities, sexual orientations, mental health? How do you communicate in a way so that everybody sitting at that table actually feels like they can make decisions and be heard? Juliet, Obi, you spoke a lot of that idea of being heard. You know, what is actually the strategy there? You know, because we all have an ideology. We all have a sense of, yeah, we could all sit at this table and, you know, our best intentions. We're going to listen to everybody. But everybody here grew up in the same society, an individualistic racial capital society. We've internalized the very opposite of the thing we are sitting here and intending to do. So what's the strategy that gets us on the same table? If you could tell me about things like nonviolent communication, for example, if you could tell me about things like this is how you sit people at the table and really practice communities of care, this is the concrete stuff that I'm looking for. So that when we sit at the table, we actually all have a baseline of how to do this work. We're not replicating oppressive dynamics of you expect, say, the racialized person at the table to do all that work for you. Or opposite, if you are a non-racialized person and you've been conditioned to just come in with the solutions, right? Because this is what we see. So what are the concrete strategies? What's the baseline we all need to hold to actually do this work cooperatively? So that's the kind of mobilization I'm hoping for. I'm also hoping that co-op sector is great, but the co-op sector could also be insular. Like, we're looking for solutions within ourselves. We kind of have to break out of that. Not kind of, we have to break out of that. You know, the co-op principles are great, but they can't tell you how to solve all of these things. So it's about how do we make these connections outside of the sector? We're talking about DEI. Are there any equity and inclusion professionals that were invited into the space to assist co-op educators in that work? Because if there isn't, there should be, right? So as I play back this talk in my head, it sounds like I did a very focused and, you know, but maybe that's my ego. But you let me know. Let's get some nods. Was this a focused and, you know, or was this like a all over the place jovial? Okay, good. All right. Okay. So thank you, everybody. And I will turn it back over to Gary.
Hey, that was excellent. Thank you, Christine, stepping in and saving me this morning, you know. So as the conversations, you know, we talked about diversity, equity, inclusion, and their stories, through their stories. And it really come down, you know, the conversations around how things are really intertwined and interconnected, or what I say intertwingled, is connecting those intersectoral pieces. And, you know, the call to action for everybody to mobilize, to connect and work together across the different ethnicities in support of this work is definitely what's needed in many communities, especially these communities. And I got chills up here, I just have to say, because y'all, thank you, ladies. I mean, this is beautiful. So I don't know if y'all want to shift the camera, but I want to open this up now for some questions from the audience. Do you have any questions that you would like to ask of any of the panelists in regards to their work and the dialogue that we've had? Any questions? Yes, Steve.
Yeah, I think this question, I'll make it for Obi, although anyone can respond to it, but I was in might give you a chance to elaborate on that concept and how that might occur.
Okay. Hello? Hello? Okay. So looking at the formal, so now the formal economy is what we have, right? We have the banks, we have, we get money from the banks, we get loans, we get like credits and stuff. We also get grants, right, from the government and stuff, right? So in terms of the informal one, that's where the Aroskas come in, right? What we do, like the ASUSU. So how we do a PWP is we actually work both, right? In the sense that we work together as a group. So we raise money from each other. That's our starting point. We contribute because, look at it this way, even the government of Canada requires that we have a contribution before we're able to apply for a grant, right? So how would we do it? So, and you know that one person may not be able to have that, right? So when we're able to pool our funds together, right? And then we now apply for that, we're more successful, right? So it's ability to work together, to apply for grants, ability to work together. And then where does the money go? It goes into the bank. Remember, it's not on our pillows, right? On our beds. It goes into the bank, goes into the system, right? So either way, it's still part of the formal system, even though we're going within, right? We're going from what we know, what we think is the fastest way to work, how we can succeed. And yes, when we do, we push ourselves. Sometimes 1 month we may not have, right? But we push ourselves. We say we have to get, and we get it, right? And we're able to have that money, and then we now invest it into, we can invest it into, if we real estate, right? So now, for instance, if we invest into real estate, it's still back into the formal system, right? And we successfully maybe get a property. We successfully are able to get a property, and it turns into revenue for us, for the members, right? It was done it was Kenya. It was done successfully in Kenya. Women were able to lift themselves out of poverty with that. So there is, with how we are right now, there's the connections are already there. They're already there. It's not alien. It's just threading both ways. It's going within ourselves and finding solutions that work for us and work for who we are and where we come from, what is easiest to us. Now, some of us cannot just walk into the bank and get a loan because we will not be given, right? Because that's where the systemic barriers are, systemic racism. They just automatically assume because you're black, you don't have, you shouldn't have, right? Or because you're black, you don't have the qualifications to be able to have what you have. You see people that have the best qualifications, but they're still treated like they have nothing, right? And like Christine said, we all said, we are interconnected. We are one people. We are one people. And the sooner we understand that, the sooner we're able to solve the issues that are in front of us, because we're not doing the right thing, and very soon we will all go extinct, and then the environment will still be here, and we will not be here. We can go to Mars, but Mars is not for everybody, right? There's no space in Mars. We're not Elton Musk, right? We don't have those. All of us do not have the money to go to Mars. That I know. Black, white, green, we don't have it. So why don't we work together and make this place livable for ourselves, right? And use those alternative mechanisms, go indigenous ways of doing things. Because there's a reason, like when we go from within, go for what was before, we learn. Sometimes the solutions, sometimes because we're not going backwards or we don't understand what is backwards, we go and create systems that have no base, no structure. And it's not solid, it will fall. Currently, our economy has no basis. It doesn't have a structure. Like if you go, you're going to get it comes from out of the country and stuff like that. But all I'm saying is that alternative systems, formal and informal alternative systems, can work, right? It can work. We just have to open ourselves to it and not get scared or be afraid that what somebody is going to do something wrong, or we're not going to need a financial system anymore, and money's not going to go back into Canada. No, it's all connected because we live here.
Thank you. Excellent question. We had a question over here. Someone quickly. We have a few moments left. Another question? Yes.
My name is Michelle. I just wanted to start with acknowledging the Stolen and the Musqueam people. And I have goosebumps just what a wonderful panel this was. And I really want to thank you for talking about the racism and the co-op movements. I think that's something we really have to address. I've been very much influenced by Caroline Hossein, Shanice Hossein, who talks about the absurdity, in a sense, of thinking that Rochdale was the beginning of co-ops. To really embrace the knowledge of Black women cooperatives, of Indigenous cooperatives. And so one of the questions I had for you was around the idea of caucuses. I mean, this is something I'm at UBC talking about, like Black caucuses, BIPOC caucuses, where members don't have to feel they're always having to explain things like racism and white supremacy, and having white caucuses that are learning to unlearn their racism. If that's something that you think would be useful in the co-op movement as a way to expand and to deal with some of the issues you're talking about in terms of microaggressions beyond, would that be a useful model to think about in the co-op movement?
Who?
So, do you know what I mean by caucuses? Or
Yes, yes, yes. But who do you want to address?
One of you all want to speak to that, Christine?
Am I being heard? Okay, all right, great. The idea of having caucuses to address these issues, I mean, I think that in terms of cooperation among communities, my answer is always going to come from within community. We need to strengthen our ability to cooperate so we can move forward. So, so let's say, for example, there was a Black co-op caucus. Would that be helpful? Only if it is a caucus that within community we are building the skills to learn how to empower each other, right? So for example, within any Black community, you would have to address sort of that internalized, for example, homophobia, or that internalized misogyny. Dealing with that together so that we could come up with solutions that push our communities forward. I love the title of Latinx Co-op Power because it's exactly that. How do we build power within our communities? So that's where I would see the advantage of having a caucus-style grouping that's based on identity, but only if it takes into consideration intersectionality. I can't answer for white. You would have a better answer for a white caucus than I would, and what needs to be unlearned and learned in that context.
Okay, thank you. So with that, this is going to have to be the last question, and these women and myself will be around all week. We'll be also participating as part of other sessions. And again, as you know, we're speaking to diversity. We're speaking to equity. Equity is justice. Justice is equity. And then we're also speaking to inclusion and removing those barriers through the appropriate action and animating it in a sense. And it takes all of us. It doesn't take just one group. It takes everybody working together and finding those intersections to overcome and lift up humanity. So with that being said, I want to thank you all, and again, thank you all for being a part of this panel, and hopefully we can see this conversation move down the road into other spaces and other places to continue to work. Have a good day. Thank you very much.